Hi everyone, welcome to Ruby Tuesday. Today we have Julio and also me, Gui, from Penang. So let's start with Julio on the slides. Ruby Tuesday. Today we have Julio and also me from Penang. So let's start. Today, today we have
Hello, hello everybody. Goy, have you finished? I think I was hearing you
there's
very slow.
echo from your side. Your speaker is maybe too loud.
My
Hello, hello
side.
everybody. Yeah.
Goy, have you finished? I think I was hearing you
There's
very. Okay, I was trying to keep the live on another laptop just so I could watch it, but I'm just closing and make it simple. All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Hope you all nice and settled in the comfort of your home and watching Ruby Tuesday. So
hope you all
nice and
I
settled in the comfort of your. So, Goy,
yep, we
I
can move to the
only.
next slide.
Okay, all right. So let's go. That's it. So it's KL97 Penang 46. So this is brought to you by Engineers Almai and Ruby Mai. Note to yourself, remember to introduce yourself. All right. Here today it's me, Helio from Kuala Lumpur, helping organize these and this Ruby Tuesday meetup. And Goy, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Gui from Penang, so I'm a co-organizer for Ruby Meetup. Nice to meet you.
All right, Goy. Sounds good. All right. Without further ado, let's get into Let's Brakeman. Let's Brakeman. So let me go to my talk here. So there you go. So the title of my talk today is Let's Brakeman, not Brakeman. So my name is Helio Kola, and that's it. So a little bit about me. By the way, I love that GIF, and it just is definitely me. That's how I work. I look at that and like, oh, there is no better uh, depiction of me working. I've been software developer for like 21 years. So I'm old school back in the day. I've been working with Ruby on Rails for about 20 years. 20 years, 12 years. So I started even before Bundler existed. So back in the day when I started, I used to bundle the gems myself and manage all the installation myself. So that was really, really long time ago. That's it. So here is the agenda of my talk. What I'm going to be talking today. What is Brakeman? I'm going to talk a little bit just to give you guys some food for thoughts about defense in depth and what that is. Then I'm going to go back to Brakeman and we're going to go through the documentation, how to set up, basic usage. Then we're going to talk a little bit about warning types and what actually that means. And then we're going to look at a few OSS repositories. If you run Brakeman in some open source repositories, what the result in the reports are going to look like. All right. So what is Brakeman? Brakeman, that's the definition for the creator. This was created by this gentleman called Justin Collins. His website is like presidentbeef.com. It's kind of very, very funny. And I think this sentence comes from him. Brakeman is a free vulnerability scanner specifically designed for Ruby on Rails applications. It statically analyzes Rails application code to find security issues at any stage of development. And that's their main website, breakmanscanner.org. And I suggest you check out this gentleman's website, presidentbeef.com. There's some really interesting stuff in there. He's been doing these for a really long time. He created Brakeman for a really long time. And when I go to some of the OSS repositories, you guys will get a glimpse of that. Defense in depth. According to NIST.gov, which is some kind of agency in the US, defense in depth it's an information security strategy that integrates people, technology, and operation capabilities to establish variable barriers across multiple layers and missions of the organization. I found a WASP reference of what that is, but that link is kind of broken. It's going somewhere that there's nothing to do with defense in depth. I found a web archive, which is a really interesting PDF that comes from another US organization that you may have heard about called NSA, and there's always a Wikipedia about it. In software development, computing technology, this is what this is, but defense in depth is like a military strategy that basically you layer out multiple, you put multiple layers of defense in tools and barriers, and then the idea is not to prevent anything to be breached, is to delay any attacker. So in Brakeman, I use as one of these layers. I wanted to make a nicer slide here with some kind of a nice animation with someone trying to break into a system, and then they break one layer, and then there you go, there's another layer, and then they break that layer, and then there you go, there's another layer. But I didn't have too much time, and I'm not really good building up some of these animations, especially in a presentation. So I'm going to stick with this textual. If you guys have any question about these, I know a little bit about this. I've just been through a SOC 2 certification where they described about these, and there's a bunch of different layers that you end up using on a day-to-day to secure your application. Anyway, that's kind of it about defense in depth. Let's go back to Brakeman now. Set up and use. So let's take a look at the documentation, right? So every time we want to do something, we should read the documentation. And there we go, brakemanscanner.org. So if you go to the website, you're going to see a bunch of stuff. There's a really interesting inactive change log here in the main page that shows a bunch of stuff and documentation. There you go. I'm going to skip the introduction because we just talked a little bit about it. So let's go to installation. So you can use Brakeman in a couple of different ways. You can install on your machine, or you can put it in your gem file, the development environment. The way I usually do is this way. I just put in the development group in my gem file, gem, and then do it. And then gem, and then bundle install, and then you have it available. You can also clone and run it and do a bunch of stuff. I not only use that, I also set these up on CI. So if by any code, any new feature that you're building, if you write a code that's going to generate a high severity, high vulnerability, you're going to write CI. So then you're required to change that. But I didn't put that in the talk. Maybe I can talk a little bit more about these some other time. So that's how I install it. Running. And to run, after you do bundle install, it's very simple. You go to your application, run Brakeman, or you can do Brakeman and point into the folder where your Rails application is in either this way or using the -p parameter. So if you have Brakeman installed on your machine, it doesn't need to be in your dependencies and that kind of stuff. So you just run that. Run that way, and you can get the report the same way. All right, so let me see what else I put in this slide here. Okay, options. All right, so install, run, options. Let's see what the options are. So Brakeman has quite a bit of options, and as many tools. Brakeman --help is going to show you everything, and I'm just going to talk through a few of them here. -a, these runs all checks. Brakeman has two types of checks: require a default and optional. Dash A runs all of them. Without dash A, only runs the default. The default, if you have some other more advanced configuration files, only runs specific checks that you want. Dash in, each check will be separated by thread. These behavior, to disable these behavior, you use dash in. Dash in, like separate, each check will be run in a separate thread by default. So not very much to do there. I don't think I ever used that. Brakeman, some path to the app. We talked a little bit about these, the dash P, dash K, suppress informational warnings. I don't care about informational warnings. These are a few others that you can use to automate in your CI. Dash dash, no exit on warning, no exit on error. So just keep going and runs everything if you find any warning and error. I think these would help you to I never use these ones in my CI integration, but these could help you to run through everything even though there is an error or warning. A few old school, as you can see how long Brakeman is, the main documentation page still talks about Rails 3. So if you run Brakeman-3, it forces you to a Rails 3 mode. So this means that this is back when Rails 3 was the latest version. And dash 4, 5, 6, 7, that's what kind of this dash integer is going to do it. Let me see what else here. There's a couple other things that I haven't used too much. No assume routes. I don't know exactly what that is, but there's a bunch of options. Escape HTML faster if you want to go a little faster, and you can do that. Skip libs, no branching. A few other things that you can do to kind of customize to whatever you're trying to do. You can skip some files. You can only test some files. Only test some files is a little tricky because sometimes the vulnerability in your file, it doesn't come from the code in that file, but comes from an active record query that you made, and then you use on that. So this is kind of, I don't want to devise these. One day I was poking around these and fixing some of these warnings, Brakeman reporting an application, and I tried like, oh, I'm changing this file, let me only run that file, and then all of a sudden the vulnerability was gone. I was like, oh, holy moly, I just fixed this vulnerability, and guess what? Even though the warning shows a given file, the source of that vulnerability is elsewhere. So these only files are a little tricky. So I got bitten by that once. Skip libs, never did that. Lib is part of the folder, you're going to use it. But if you have a bunch of stuff in your lib folder and you don't want to test what is in the lib folder, just don't do it. You can also do specific checks, check SQL and that kind of stuff. Anyway, there is a bunch of stuff. This is another interesting one that we're going to use. The report. So Brakeman, after it runs, it generates a report for you that you can scan it through. And what else? Let me see if there is anything else here interesting. Table width, I never use it. Summary, absolute path. There's a ton of feature here, a ton of parameters and options that I never use it. There is this thing here, Brakeman ignore. We're going to see a little bit of that. So for false positives, you can ignore some specific warnings, so they go away. Just hide them, ignore them. And there's a few other things that are related to that. Let me see if there is anything else here. Confidence levels, high, medium, weak. As you go through to the report, you guys are going to see a little bit more about what this is about. Configuration file, like I mentioned to you, if you have a YAML, Brakeman YAML, config YAML with specific parameters that you want to run, so you don't need to pass all these parameters in the command line. You put all of them in these config files, and that's it. Never use these config files for anything. I did use Brakeman and ignore in one of the applications that I had to ignore some stuff, some false positives. Miscellaneous. There is a few things, but Brakeman checks shows you those things in optional checks. Shows which checks are optional. So there we go. That's kind of what I wanted to show you guys a little bit, just to give you guys a little documentation to read later. There's a bunch of stuff that you can read and learn and study these a little bit more. Warning types. Before I go to some more fun stuff, let's go back to check the documentation about warning types. Let me go back here. I guess it's probably here. Warning types. There is after the getting started, right? To just run to this section. Now we're going down here. I talked a little bit about confidence level that was in the other page. Now warning types. I'm not going to talk about all these things here. Reducing false positives, ignoring false positives, using Brakeman and Brakeman as a rake. But these are interesting things that you can, if you're interested in these, if you plan to use it, I suggest you kind of read these through as well. All right, warning types. So these are kind of self-explanatory, right? Warning types of warnings that Brakeman categorize the vulnerabilities and the warnings, the findings. And if you kind of know a little bit, being around for a while, you're going to recognize a few things. Cross-site request forgery, denial of service, danger send, these are mass assignment. These are like a common or WASP top 10 issues. SQL injection, unsafe deserialization. So anyway, a couple of things that you're gonna do it. And as you click into some of these things, or you see this cross-site scripting in these like 3 categories: content tag, JSON, and regular ones. So, but if you look into that, let's look in the easy one, SQL injection. We all know what SQL injection is. So this is a typical comment, a typical way that's vulnerable. You see a basic Rails 2x example. Brakeman, it's an old school tool that's been around for a really long time. I think I learned Rails with Rails 2. I don't remember now if Rails 2 or Rails 3, and it will be 187. So it's a really long time ago. Anyway, this is a typical active record query, right? So user find conditions, username equals something, right? So there is an easy way to do a SQL injection here. Is you do, let's see if they have an example here. So we don't have an example of how to do that, but basically you put some extra conditions, some extra information, these params username, and then he runs 2 queries, and then you get access to a different user that's not your username. And so it kind of explains a little bit. It explains what Brakeman does. So like Brakeman focuses on active record methods dealing with building SQL statements. So Brakeman is going to look into inside active record and find some of these warnings. Sometimes it's a false positive that SQL queries you're never going to get a SQL injection in those SQL queries, but then there's a false positive. Sometimes you'll find it. Anyway, these are all the warning types that Brakeman's categorize and group the findings in your code. All right. There's a bunch of stuff here. I'm not going to click on all of them. And there's remote code execution. I think we're going to see some of these. You see, if you use eval, if you use send or customize, these are prone to provide remote code execution intrusions, right? So anyway, that's what I wanted to mention to you guys. That there's a bunch of stuff here. I recommend you read some of these, but I usually come through here from the report. So let's get back to my presentation, and then we're going to come back here in a few minutes. That's it for warning types. All right, Brakeman into the wild. As I was doing this talk, I was going to, I looked for a few open source repositories to run Brakeman and see what's happening. So these are the ones that I picked. Mastodon, I think most people now might be aware of it. Mastodon does have Brakeman in the gem file, and it has ignored warnings. We have a config.ignore. We're going to look into that. Foreign, I'm not sure if you recognize the name, but this is what is behind the dev.to, the dev.to website. And they also have Brakeman in the gem file, but they don't have ignore files. But one interesting thing that I note here is that even though they don't have ignored warnings, all the severity high, or most of the severity high vulnerabilities uses the .html safe. We're going to look into that. So that kind to me was an indication that at some point they looked through these Brakeman warnings and they refactored the code that they organized, but they didn't create an ignore list. GitLab, not using GitLab. Vue, I got rid of this repository. I doubt anybody here know what this is about, but it's shut down already. It's not up anymore. If you're curious what that is, I can talk a little bit about it some other time. We can chat about it on the Slack. Railsdevs.com and Rails Gold. So these are the repositories that we're going to look at the report. Okay, let's go to some more interesting stuff. Mastodon Brakeman report. So this is kind of a screenshot, and there's a few things that I want to mention to you guys here. Has ignored warnings. So someone went there and ignored specific warnings as false positive. The last updated was March 2022, so a year ago, right? Some of the warnings that were ignored was 6 years ago. So Mastodon is kind of very popular since last year, right? Because of all the Twitter shenanigans. But they ignored some warnings in their code base 6 years ago. Some of them 5 years ago. I think there's some that were going to ignore like 2 years ago, and some last year. So it sounds like the Mastodon team, like kind of once a year, they run Brakeman and they kind of see what they need to do about it. This is the warning types. You see, there's 1, common injection, 2, cross-site request forgery, 1, dangerous send, 2, unmaintained dependencies. I think this report is from another application. Maybe let's take. We'll take a look at those reports. Okay, so let me show you those reports and what they look like, and we'll see some code now. Finally, all right. Before we see some code, I'm just going to show you guys the Brakeman ignore file, just so you guys can see what it is. So basically, when you run Brakeman in an interactive mode, you can ignore some warnings, and this is a SQL injection, the code was something like this, you see? Typical SQL, results, join, inner, status tag, and all of that. And they decided, and then you see here the link to the SQL injection warning time documentation. So you can remember what Brakeman is doing that's flagging this code. There is a note here. So if you decided to ignore these for a specific reason, it would be nice to put a note and explain why you ignore that. So the next developer, when they look into that, they may like, oh, okay, so is that why you ignore that warning? So, okay, good, I'm good. You're right, that's a good reason to ignore these, or maybe not, or we learn something new, and then that note is going to give you some contextual information about why that SQL query was ignored, so on and so forth. But I don't think they put notes in any of these warnings. But these are the warnings that I was telling you guys about in a little bit that was done a couple of years ago, right? So if you go to the blame, you see this file was created 6 years ago. This particular warning type started to be ignored 5 years ago, and last year this was updated, right? So probably this code change line from some other line, right? So this file changed, and the line where the join is it's has been updated. So that was updated last year. Um, This is another one last year. You see, this one was 5 years ago. You see, this one 3 years ago. So this warning was first ignored 5 years ago, and 2 years later, this line was updated. So probably this file was updated in the place where the line where the vulnerability is changed in the file. So Mr. I think that's what is his name? Gargron. I don't know how to pronounce that, but he kind of updated the line. So last year, you see this one was 2 years ago, 6 years ago, 3 years ago. Okay, this is probably the beginning of the line, the file. 3 years, 2 years. So that's where the information comes from, is the git blame on the Brakeman ignore file. And you put that in your repository. Let me see. I don't think there's any note. This also was updated last year. So they are using that version that looks like the latest. Oh no, I think there is a 541, I think. Anyway, so that's a Brakeman ignore file. So here's the report, right? Mastodon report. Let me check that. Oh no, there you go. Unmaintained dependence, 2 of them. Oh, there you go. Oh no, sorry, I got messed up with that. That's it. So let me go back here. I did mess up my screenshots. This screenshot, this stuff here, I'll update these slides when I publish. This is not from Mastodon. This is from Rails Goat. This is from, let me go back to here. This is from this repository, not Mastodon. And the reason for my messed up is because Rails Goat is it is an old application. Let me see where it is. It was supposed to be here somewhere. Rails Goat. This is such a old application that I couldn't install that on my machine. So the way I ran the Brakeman report for Rails Goat was something like this. I was in the Mastodon folder, and I run -a, and I forgot to tell the report to be put in the Rails Goat folder. Remember those options that are showing the -p, you indicate where your Rails app is. And so that's kind of where I got messed up. So anyway, this is what actually the Mastodon Brakeman report looks like. There is 0 confidence high vulnerability. There's 6 of one of them. In the end, there is 1 denial of service, 1 reverse mapping, and 4 unscoped queries. And then when you run the report and generate the report, it shows these things, right? That's kind of what those report, the summary is showing. So weak, and medium. So denial of service, unscoped finding. And then here is the link that takes you to that. So if you want to read again on what denial of service Mastodon warning type means, you click here and it's going to take you to that denial of service. So I showed you guys a little bit about this page where it shows all the warning types, but usually I don't get to those warning types by reading this page, but through reading the report with the warnings. So if you want to read what the denial of service is, you have a handy link here, which is any attack which causes service to become unavailable for the legitimate clients. And if you guys been around for a long time, Ruby prior to 2.2, there was symbols were not garbage collected. So depending on how you use symbols, you could cause a DOS in your application because those symbols is going to use all your memory. But anyway, so this was an example. And basically what this is this is a regular expression, right? It's a regular expression, denial of service. If you go back to that, rejects DOS, right? So if an attacker can control the content of a regular expression, they may be able to construct a regular expression that requires exponential time to run. So if you put in a regular expression something that the user is typing, then, for example, look at this query, right? So imagine that I'm query or filtering by some attributes by a regular expression using the mesh. So if you have a code like this, an attacker could write a regular expression in this query parameter that will take exponential time to run. You run that a couple of times, your web server is going to be 100% CPU for a couple hours, and nobody else can use your application. Anyway, so that's the regular expression. If you click here, it shows a little bit of the code, right? So that's the warning. You see these, I think this is the line where the, no, maybe not. I don't know what CWEID is. It's something else. But it shows you a little bit of the code that you have. So, okay, now, you know, lib mastodon domains CLI, that is this regular expression that gets the domain from somewhere. There is a regasp escape, so maybe that's safe. But anyway, it shows a little bit about the code. So if you feel like, oh no, that's that domain, the user puts this domain. This is like domain blocks, so probably is a internal staff to Mastodon or to the instance, the server's admin. Is not to the general public to set up this domain block. But anyway, if you look at these, and these sound like, the user can put whatever domain here. So then these regular expression, so the user can generate a regular expression that will take exponential time to run, but this is in lib. This is in the lib folder, so probably my web server is not get to this. So if you determine that this is a false positive, that this domain, this regular expression, could never be used by a random user for a public user, then this is a false positive, and this is not gonna cause a denial of service. If the user can create this domain, any user can create these block domains thing, then maybe you're vulnerable. Anyway, now that you have to this, there's a bunch of stuff that here that you can look. These are unscoped finding. You see, account moderation node.find. These unscoped find is an interesting one as well. If you look at here, you can see what that is. And the idea is that you do this kind of stuff. You do this instead of this. So if that params ID is from an account that doesn't belong to your authenticated user, you don't leak data. If you do this, and I'm tampering these ID and passing a bunch of IDs to see if I can read these accounts, all the accounts that's not from my user, these will not finding that ID, right? Because it's scoped to my current user, to the authenticated user. In comparison with these, I can probably read accounts from other users that are not my user. Anyway, so you go through this stuff and you look at this code, you read the documentation, what it's about, and you see if that, and you determine whether that is a false positive or no. Okay, I'm sorry, someone can actually read a moderation note from somebody else. Imagine that I'm a moderator and I only have access to my moderation notes, or just my team have access to my moderation notes, not everybody. So in that case, this is a real example of an unscoped query leaking data. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about all of them. These are a bunch of ones. These ones is reverse star nabbing. It's just about if you put like no open, no refer. That's another one. This is actually oh, there we go. Probably worth a pull request somewhere. It's reverse time nabbing is actually an optional check. Is not default. So I don't know where the documentation of that is, but the link from the report is kind of going a place where it doesn't find. Anyway, so I'm not sure how much time I got left, but so let's move forward here. All right, so we looked at master. Okay, let me go back here. Let's look into another repository. So just a reminder, this screenshot here, it's bad. That's not the right one. That's from Rails Gold. But these things were correct. Foreign, they do have Brakeman in their gem file, and it was added in 2018 in the initial commit of the repo. So probably the time when they went open source. But it was there. They've been using this since 2018. They started with a version of Brakeman 3.7, and now they are on 5.4.1, which is, I think, is the latest. And the version of the Brakeman has been updated continuously from by the Panda bot. So they have a bot that updates some dependencies and open API automatically for them that they just review and merge. And this is a summary of their report, right? So 10 unscoped findings, 2 SQL injections, 1 remote code execution. These are 7 high. So this time they have some high vulnerabilities. So let's take a look into foreign. So this is not. Okay, foreign. Anyway, this is what I was telling you guys about. So this is the commit that actually added Brakeman to the gem file. And it's labeled initial commit 5 years ago. So they are using Brakeman for a really long time. And probably when they went, like I mentioned, when they open source the foreign repo. Let's look at the report, Brakeman. So there's 7 here. So these are all the checks that they run, right? So all those checks, the default plus the optional. I think I run all these reports in with the -a, so it includes the default plus the optional. I think that's where this reverse step nabbing, I think, is an optional one. Anyway, let's look into that. True highs here in this current warnings, redirect. So possible unprotected redirect on line 2. So you see article finding, discussion log, path, manage. So malicious users can make your application redirect themselves to a phishing site, to a bad site, right? So that's what the redirect is. So at the time that this documentation was built, unvalidated redirects and forwards are number 10 on the WASP top 10. So now I'm not sure if that's anymore. You see, it has a link here to the OWASP top 10 of 2010. So quite a bit ago. So I think top 10 probably is a little bit different today. But anyway, so there is some information here why Brakeman, what Brakeman looks for to find these, to label these as a warning. And there is a Rails 7 update. So Rails 7's changed a little bit of the redirect to add these, allow all the host true or false. So, and then very recent update to Brakeman. This is very recent. It came with Rails 7. So there's some information here that you can read what or why true and false here will cause these to be a warning. What are the problems that these can happen? What kind of vulnerability that these could put your app in harm's way. So these are two of them. You see remote code execution, probably constantize. It's kind of a way for you to execute remote execute code. If that information comes, if whatever you are constantize coming from the user. I don't know too much about constantizing. I'm not sure if that's Ruby or Rails, but it was if you look into the mode code execution, let's look at that documentation. So you see, I think I run to these early on in the talk. So basically, evolve, send, constantize are places where a malicious user can craft some specific information that some information data sent to application that can execute code. So every time Brakeman finds those things, he's going to put a warning. And then you can review and see if that is you see source type constantize. You see source type, it's kind of tricky that when I click it to highlight it, close the line. But anyway, source type constantize, that's your problem. And source type comes from, you see, allow types. In allow, like a permitted list, it sounds like there is a user subscription, allowed types, and I do check from params, anything coming from the user, and I find the allowed types, and that's what I do constantize. So it sounds like a safe code. I only have specific allowed types. I only allow to constantize a permitted list of allowed types that I have in my code. That's hard coded, and it looks like it's hard coded here in these allowed types, and it's coming from there. So, but I'm selecting that based on a user information, right? Param source type is something that comes from the user. But anyway, it sounds like safe. So we're not going to execute some well-crafted user, some source type coming from the user. We're not going to constantize that. We only constantize what we allow. But anyway, we can take a look on these variables, see what it is and what is in there, and then see if this could be a problem. SQL injection, weak hash, cache key. This is a cache key. This was a MailChimp bot. Yeah, this makes a digest of the email downcase. So probably not using these for a password. Neither one of these two seems like to be passwords. This seems to be like some kind of digest that you use for cache key. So it's not a password. So it wouldn't be probably false positives. But you can look at that, these weak hash. I don't remember if I look into these one. Brakeman reports weak hash warning when it finds users of hashing algorithms that should not be used for security-sensitive contexts, you see, such as hashing password or generating signatures. So if you're not using SHA-1 and MD5 for passwords and signatures, then it's fine. If you're using for password, then it's bad. So that's why we're going to look into these, right? So these are doesn't look like password nor signatures, but you can look into the code and review and see what that is about. You see MD5 email, I'm getting an MD5 email, but I can search the code and see where MD5 email is and make sure that that's not going to any signature or any password. The same thing for the cache key. This looks like cache key, so it's not going anywhere, so these are false positives. Anyway, there's more high here. Navigation link, insufficient validation. This is another interesting one. Insufficient validation for icon using this regular expression. And this is from regular expression uses -a and -z as anchors. I reviewed these, and I don't know why using these anchors in regular expression would be good, but this is a hard code regular expression. So, but anyway, this looks like an interesting one. You're validating an icon with a regular expression that doesn't use these anchors. We need to learn a little bit more about this one to see if there's any potential for issue here. In all these, like all these things, you need to kind of look at the code, look at what the warning type is, read the documentation, try to understand what you're vulnerable, if there's a way to refactor your code and do a little bit different. This reverse tabbing is very simple. If you just add this rel, no opener, no refer, they go away. Anyway, that's kind of Mastodon. You see, there's a couple of cross-site scripting. Unscoped model attribute, line 118, display add params. Oh, sorry, this is not Mastodon, this is foreign. Okay, so I was like, ads in Mastodon, I think they tell me that they don't have ads in Mastodon. So what's display add in Mastodon code is about? So, but that's not Mastodon, that's foreign. You see HTML safe. These, I think, is one of the things that I mentioned to you guys. I reviewed some of these high vulnerabilities in the foreign code, and these uses, these uses HTML safe. These are the one, another one, HTML safe. Another one, HTML safe. Another one, HTML safe. Let me see if there is more. Medium. No, this seems a different one. There is an HTML safe in here. I don't remember the top of my head what HTML safe in Rails likely probably does, but I got curious to read what actually HTML safe actually does, try to remember. It probably just escape a bunch of characters and make that HTML safe for you to put into the DOM in your HTML page that you send back to the user. But I was like, wow, all these guys, they have HTML safe. That cannot be a coincidence. So it does feel to me that they actually, the guys who wrote this code and who put Brakeman here kind of looked into that and did that, but I couldn't track that. But anyway, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday, I will try to remember what exactly HTML safe is, but to see what exactly it does and kind of, oh, that's interesting. It escapes a bunch of characters. It removes a bunch of stuff that make it safe, like the name suggests. But anyway, this could be all good case of ignoring. But foreign does not have a Brakeman ignore file in the repo. So to some extent, I kind of feel like that's not good because as we were seeing on the Mastodon Brakeman ignore file, having the history of that file gives the next developer some contextual knowledge. For example, this vulnerability here, it's been around for a really long time. So knowing some of this information, if you're dealing with some issue, or if you're refactoring some of this code, it's important, it's valuable information as a developer. At least if I were working on this repo and having this information, oh, this was oh, look, the fingerprinted was changed last year. So the line changed, this code is moving. So this code is old, but it's moving around, so it's important. So having this information, I, as a developer, finds it valuable if I'm working that code. And compared to foreign, they don't have it, but it looks like that they actually uh, investigated these warnings. But because there is no, they didn't ignore, I can only guess, right? There is way too many HTML safe exactly where there is a high and some medium findings that I find it too coincidental. So it sounds like they actually did that on purpose. So if they did it on purpose, and now if I look into this HTML safe in 3, or if they did this 5 years ago, maybe today I should review again whether this processed HTML can have some really well crafted HTML that bypasses the safety or HTML safe parameter. Given the fact that I don't have that Brakeman ignore, I don't know what happened here. If somebody ever uh, look into this, if they put this HTML safe on purpose or not. So my time investigating these, if I'm looking to, if I'm a site reliability engineer or senior engineer foreign, I would spend more time on this than I would if I knew that this has been ignored by X developer. If I know which developer will ignore there and he's still in the he or she is still in the company, I can go talk to them. Can discuss these. So I do feel like if we put Brakeman in a repo, you should create a config ignore file if your developer is ignoring them, and even put a note. And anyway, that's kind of just my opinion about these things. Why I think adding config Brakeman.ignore in the repo a good thing. But for some reason, the folks at foreign, they didn't. Even though Brakeman is in the repo since ever, right? Since 2018. Anyway, let's see if there is anything else here that I wanted to kind of mention to you guys before we move to the next.
Hi, Elio. I think we have questions from the audience. So let me
Okay.
one. So what are the common ignore warnings? Are we going to have to review it one by one?
Okay, so common ignore warnings.
Yeah.
And if you need to review one by one, yes, you do need to review them, because look at this, right? So this is foreign. I'm a developer at foreign. So I just run updated Brakeman and just run it and I get all this stuff. These are all the current vulnerabilities. Then what I'm going to do with these? I'm going to review these findings, for example. And then I'm not sure if there are common ignore, but the ignore ones are the ones that you review the code and like, this is a false positive. So for example, this one, the remote code execution, right? Even though this is medium, but let me look into that. So this is a remote code execution. Allow type is an array with 5 strings, and for some reason we constantize that. So this is a false positive. There is no chance, to the best of my abilities and knowledge about all these things, that this is actually a vulnerability. Actually, I do believe this is a false positive. So right, you see, me as a developer, I'm investigating this code, I'm studying this report, and I'm determining, to the best of my abilities, this is a false positive. If this is a false positive, I want to ignore this. And the way you ignore that, you run this thing. Let me go back here to my command line. There is a way, I didn't mention that, I probably should have, but if you run Brakeman-i interactive, you can generate that config ignore file for you. So if you run that, let's try to run here. So let's see what's going to happen. Then what I want to do, right? I already spent the time and I determine this is a false positive, so I want to ignore. So the next developer, next week, imagine that I'm in a rotation, right? In our team, every week, one developer run to Brakeman reports and do some study of the code to see if you have vulnerabilities, right? This week is my turn. So I am going to set these as false positive. So next week, somebody else can look into the next developer in the team can look into other ones. So I'm not sure if there is a common set of ignored warnings, but the idea of the ignore is that you hide those things. It's like this is false positive, so hide this stuff away. I'm gonna document here in the ignore file, so next time someone run a report, it ignores that, but it actually tells you, right? You see, look, ignore warnings. To some extent, I think there is an oh no, Brakeman foreign doesn't have config.ignore file. So, but it shows here that some has been ignored. If you look at the Brakeman, there we go. You see 9 ignore warnings. These ignore warnings, they don't show up in the report because they have been ignored. So now, like, my lists are smaller. But by the way, look at that. You can see the ignored ones in the report as well. So you can review it again. So if I have time, I get to that one. So if we clear out everything, then we go to the ignored one. So if you go back here, you see, look at that. Input file. So if you have a set of ignore files in that, you indicate where the path is. And then if you do, let's do like inspect all ones. Okay, you see, prune obsolete ignore warnings. I'm not going to talk to these, but if there are some obsolete that are ignored, it cleans it out. Like old code that has been deleted and it was ignored. So that's what this does. Skip use current ignore configuration. Inspect on warnings, inspect new warnings. So if we inspect all warnings, then it's going to give you a type. See, look at that. So I'm just running Brakeman in this interactive mode instead of just I look at the report and then I'm going to do it. I'm doing this, and you see these are the actions that I have. Add warning to ignore list. Oh, this mass assignment, permit in that one. If we go to that, so skip this warning, ignore this warning, remove, skip this one. You will remain ignored or shown. So I can skip these guys, mass assignment. I can try to find that one that we were looking, right? Oh no, we were looking at, sorry. We're looking for it, not Mastodon. But anyway, just going back here to the question, if there are common ignore warnings, and what was the second part of the question? I think I lost a little bit.
Do we need to review one by one? But yeah,
Yeah.
I think you already mentioned that. Yeah, need to.
So then if you finish, if you're a developer, right, and you're going to this report and you finish all of them, you have a list of the ones that have been ignored, and then you can review them again. Like, no, this mass assignment, look at that. Params permit filter params. Oh no, yeah, it sounds like a good ignore. So these are good ignore my assignment. SQL injection, someone does look into this code. No, this is not a false negative. Mastodon is no flake. These are real SQL injections, so you can review them later on when you run. And when you kind of run into one of those, right? And then let me run these on the Brakeman folder. So I'm
Yep.
gonna
I think we have 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one more question from the crowd.
Okay.
So, how does Brakeman have context for unscoped find? Does it look for relationship, like an account having a user ID to determine this? So it's a previous slides where there's a current user dot find, like current user dot accounts dot find. So the person asked whether Brakeman have a context for unscoped find.
Okay, so that's a good question. Brakeman does look into all your code. So if in the view you have a .html, if that comes from an active record object that comes from the database, then it's going to flag. In the case of unscoped findings, I don't know exactly how does Brakeman does, but I suspect that it only looks for these things. So if you're making a class dot find versus these, right? So these are current user dot accounts. Uh, then they would treat these as unscoped finding. So these definitely you can find out that account is a class type. So I'm running that find query at the top of the class. Comparing to these is a accounts, it's an active record relation that if you look into that active record relation, you can determine that that's coming from another nested object. So you can tell that this is scoped and this is unscoped. But I'm saying that only out of my experience looking to these. I don't know exactly what Brakeman does under the table, but it might be something similar to that. Or it could just be if you do a find, probably if you read more carefully this documentation here, we can find out try to determine what it does. But this is the documentation that Breakmans provide, and you can look at the code and investigate and see, try to find out in there. That's an interesting question. I don't know the exact answer to that, and but anyway. So if this is clearly an unscoped query, and these it is, and these are the things that they're gonna flag. And if it's false positive, then ignore and move on, move to the next.
Yep, agreed. There's another one saying that do you use anything else on top of Brakeman for app security?
I do. So bundle audit, and but that's kind of basically the dependent bot, right? So if there is a CV in one of your dependencies, uh, then it reads CI and make you update your code, update your dependencies, and that's kind of one other gem that I use in the code base, and both of these, both Brakeman and both bundle audit, I usually hook these up on the CI, right? Because if I'm running a build and there is a new version of Nokogiri with another CVE fix, then I get a red CI. Oh, there you go, another Nokogiri. So let me do it. Brakeman the same way. So if I'm writing a new feature and Brakeman flags another high vulnerability, then I write CI. So that's a way to, for high confidence warnings, the developer is going to be required to either ignore the file or refactor the code so CI gets clean. So these two I kind of remember top of my head that actually looked at your Rails app, code in your dependencies.
Okay. Yep. I think sounds good. Yeah.
All right.
I think we can wrap up with I think 2 to 3 slides from
Okay. All right.
the
Sounds good.
presentation.
Anyway, so I prepared a few other repos here. So GitLab, you see they have 1,000 models. There's 8 high. There's 119 SQL injections. So this is interesting. 16 denial of services, 9 authentication. Anyway, it's an interesting one. RailsDevs.com. They're not using Brakeman. All ones look like false positive. This one I did look into more details into all of them. All these 3 security warnings, they're all false positives. All these 3 here, right? Redirect in a cross-site scripting. Rails Goat was a referral by our friends Goy, and they do have 2 maintained dependencies, which is Rails, an old version of Rails and an old version of Ruby. And that's pretty much it. What I wanted to show you guys. Questions, or I answer a couple of them. I'd be curious to see what does your Brakeman report look like, and I can show some of mine as well. As I was kind of preparing this talk, I did run these in two applications, two Rails apps that I built, side projects, small stuff, and I found a couple possible SQL injections in one of them, so I need to open a PR and fix that, so I can share with you guys that Brakeman report. And the other one is like a tiny side project that it got zero, but there's nothing there. There's not good code there. There is one application that I set this up. It's a Rails application that I maintain, that I run Rails new and built like 8 years ago and been maintaining and evolving. Started with Rails 4 and now is in the latest 6, right before Rails 7. That one I did ignore a bunch of warnings about a year, 2 years ago maybe. And but there is a couple other side projects that I have that I'm curious to run these. So if you guys feel like setting up Brakeman in your repo and share the what your report looks like, maybe just share this portion here, right? There is nothing identifiable here about your code base. There's nothing, it's just a dead simple summary. So I think it will be an interesting exercise to see what you guys' report looks like. That's pretty much for me. Thank you all for your time and for your attention. If you have any more questions, we can talk. We can chat on Slack tomorrow, not tonight. And that's it for me. Thank you all.
Yep. Yeah, do join us in Slack or Facebook group. If you have anything, I think next we'll move to parking lot for this.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Let me go
Okay.
back now to the share screen. Let me go back to the parking lot, to the end of the presentation. And okay, so let's Brakeman. We talked a lot about it, and now we're moving to parking lot. And if anybody has anything that you want to talk about,
Yep. It's anyone want to share anything, you can put it into the chat. I think for myself, I'm looking into serverless alternative other than just normal cloud services like G Cloud or AWS. I'm looking into self-host serverless infrastructure. So I came across a few that's interesting, which is open source, by the way. So there's a FN project uh, where you can host your serverless system yourself. And also, one more is Apache OpenWhisk. So I can share it.
okay, should I stop sharing?
I can put it in the chat.
Uh,
You can stop sharing. No issue.
okay.
So there's one in the chat, so I can put it in. OpenWhisk Apache is an Apache project, and there's also a FN project, because both of this do support Ruby, so you can run Ruby serverless there.
Okay.
I haven't
Sorry, I
really
think
tested it.
sorry, I changed. Let me share my screen again.
Yep.
All right. So this
Yeah.
is Apache
OpenWhisk.
OpenWhisk.
Yeah. There's also a Ruby tutorial.
And the other one you said was
FN.
FN project.
Yeah.
Okay. FN project.
Yeah. With Ruby. So those are interesting. I haven't really tried it. So if you are interested in serverless outside of just AWS or G Cloud or Azure, yeah, you can try this to host it yourself. Yeah. think that's all for parking lot.
All right.
We can move to hiring shoutouts. Anyone is hiring? I think we have a couple people hiring last month in the Facebook group. Let me see whether I can share my screen. BKL. Where's my BKL? Present. Share screen. Window. Entire screen. Okay. No one able to see it. Yep. So there's one from Cognit. It's hiring for Ruby on Rails developers. Another, I think another one is NASSoft. It's hiring locally in Ara Damansara, looking for Ruby on Rails developer. Another one is Home Time. It's working remotely, hiring for senior Ruby on Rails engineers. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's 3 hiring. So yeah, do um, share hiring shoutouts. If you are hiring for Ruby developers, you can reach out to the Slack channel or Facebook channel. Yeah, I think that's all for hiring shoutouts. Um,
All right. Let me share my screen here again and see what else we have at the end of our presentation.
I think just the last page.
See you all next month, hopefully in person. Oh, I saved that hopefully in a venue near you, but maybe I forgot to save that file. All right,
Yep,
everybody. See you all next month, and that's
yep.
it.
We will find a venue for that in June. Thank you, everyone.